Hey, you're probably wondering what this is. Well, this is my other podcast called Cutscenes. It is a podcast about video game movies that I host with Travis Colnut and Katie Lesperance. We've been doing it for 2 seasons. And this is our episode about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Perfect timing, because this week we played the game about the movie. If you like what you've heard, consider subscribing to us on your podcasting platform of choice and follow us on social media at cutscenes_pod on either Twitter or Instagram. This will not be a regular thing. Please enjoy. On this episode of Cutscenes, the team confronts their 7 evil exes in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Let's get right into it.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.
Welcome to Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast, the show where we talk about the intersection between video games and movies. I'm Jacob McCourt.
I'm Katie Lesperance.
And I'm Travis Colnut.
And in this episode, we jump into 2010's Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and we start with the tutorial. We're going to take 60 seconds to give you the high-level plot of this movie, and we're going to do it hot potato style, where each of us take 20 seconds to give you the plot in pieces. Who wants to start this time?
I guess I can start.
Okay, Travis, you're going to start, and then Katie can go second, and I'll go last. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so this is a movie that is based on a comic book. And but the comic book is actually very video game related and stuff. So it pretty much follows a guy named Scott. He lives in Toronto, and he ends up seeing this girl that he finds very, very attractive, and he wants to date her. And her name is Ramona.
Ramona Flowers, and she's kind of hard to get to know, but he finds out that she has 7 evil exes. That for some reason, that she's like, you have to defeat my 7 evil exes in order to date me. So he starts running through them, and then chaos ensues.
And the chaos is a bunch of fights between these evil exes, but also there's a battle of the bands, because we didn't say Scott Pilgrim is a musician.
Oh, right.
But he's like a burnout musician and a bad musician in a band called the Sex Bob-Ombs. The cast is insane. There's so much to talk about in this movie, and why don't we just get the hell into it?
Yeah. There
Scott
you go.
Pilgrim versus the World! Guys, I love this movie. I love this movie, and I'm so happy that we're here to talk about it today.
This has been one of my favorite movies for a very, very, very long time. Probably since it came out. It's like always been within my top 10 to 5 favorite movies of all time. And I haven't watched it in a very long time. I can't even remember the last time I watched this movie. So I was like, when you guys said, let's do this, because, it's video game adjacent, right? So it's close enough that I was like, yes, we are watching this, because I'm super excited to watch it again.
Yeah, I think the last time that you watched it was the time that you were like, Katie, you have to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And you just wanted to watch it again.
Yeah.
So you're like, no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you have to watch it with me.
Pretty much.
And that was at least 5 years ago.
At least.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked it then, and I still like it now.
Yeah. It's exciting.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah, it is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's an Edgar Wright movie, and if you liked Baby Driver, which was a movie that he made a couple years ago,
I've never seen
I
it.
liked it.
Ansel Elgort, Jamie Foxx, person we shouldn't name, but the cast here, like Baby Driver, is insane.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a lot of people who were in this movie right before they blew up.
Yes.
It's like the lesser known up and coming Baby Driver, because all those people were, aside from Ansel, who's the main guy who was kind of up and coming, aside from that, everyone else in that movie is like John Hamm and Jamie Foxx. This one, it's like Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah. Anna Kendrick.
Yes.
Chris
Anna Kendrick.
Evans.
Yep. Who else is in? I mean, Michael Cera he was a big deal,
Brandon
kind of around
Routh.
that time. Yep, he was.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Brie Larson.
Kieran Culkin.
Yep.
Who's in, what show is he on?
Succession.
Thank you, Succession.
Yeah.
Cast is insane.
Yeah, this cast is absolutely insane. It's kind of crazy watching it. You're like, this was 10 years ago. Almost, yeah, exactly, because it was 2010. And so you're like, oh, this is them in their early 20s before they've really done anything major.
Sarah is just coming off of Superbad, I think.
Probably.
I think he had
I don't
done
even
it
know
already.
when Superbad came out. I can't
think
remember.
right before. And then who's the other person we just talked about?
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
No. Chris Evans.
Chris Evans, yep.
Is, I believe, just starting to be
He was probably
Captain America?
he was probably coming off of being the Human Torch in those Fantastic Four movies.
Oh God!
Oh right,
I forgot that he was the Human Torch.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He really turned that superhero thing around, didn't he? It worked out after all.
You know, there are a few people that got 2 shots at
Ryan Reynolds.
Yep. Yes.
Ben, the Big Ben, who's
Ben
dating
Affleck?
Ben Affleck.
Because he was Daredevil.
The Big Ben. I was like the one who's dating Ana de Armas.
Yeah. He was Daredevil and now he's Batman.
Yeah. But
his 2 shots at it are less successful, but that's okay. He's not Ryan Reynolds, but that's okay.
But I think it's fair to say that this movie is one of the most unique I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Definitely.
because, as you said, Travis, it's at that intersection of video games and movies, which is kind of the conceit of the show, is like, we're going to talk about video game movies, but sometimes they're based on games and sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
This movie feels like a video game the entire way through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Based in Toronto.
Yeah.
Shoutouts to Toronto. And we have Toronto! And we have a Toronto themed game later, but this movie just feels like a comic book.
Yes.
Travis, you're a huge fan of comic books. I think you have the Scott Pilgrim book somewhere on your shelf.
They're literally right behind me.
Oh, you're holding it
I'm
in your
holding
hand?
volume 6 in my hand right now. I have all of them on my shelf right now.
So I don't remember. Is the comic book based on the movie, or is the movie based on the comic
The
book?
comic came first, but not the whole comic. The movie was filmed before the comic was finished.
Oh,
So
interesting.
they kind of did their own ending. They got pretty close.
Like the comic series wasn't finished
yes,
yet. Okay.
Yes. So like I have them in graphic novels. I don't know if it came out as individual issues. I have no idea if that's the case. I think it was just in volumes. But yeah, so the movie came out, I think, at the height of like the comic coming out, and it was good. And like even like early in the movie, scenes are ripped directly from the comic. Like there's some stuff in there that is like literally shot for shot how the comic is and the layout and everything. But then it kind of does a Game of Thrones thing where, you know, it veers off a little bit because the book wasn't finished yet. And it got to close to the same ending anyways, except for a few oddball things. Like I think the end of the book, it's like spoilers, but it's like Envy and Gideon at the end as the main villains.
Oh, okay.
And Scott and Ramona together take down Gideon, like collectively, both with swords and like that. So
Okay. Yeah, the first book came out in 2004. The last book came out in 2010, exactly when
that's
the
the
movie
thing. So I
came
think
out.
the books weren't finished. So that's probably
Yeah.
like the movie came out, and so they kind of had to do their own ending.
Yeah, it is split very, I think, pretty equally between video games and comic books.
Yes.
Like visually, it looks very comic booky. There's like words overlaid. There's like sounds that are written out that are kind of overlaid. Like the phone ringing, it says ring on the screen.
Is that onomatopoeia? What's that thing where you...
A word is the
like
sound.
the spelling of the word.
Is the sound that's in onomatopoeia.
Yeah,
Onomatopoeia. You just say it fast and it's going to be right.
I'm like, onomatopoeia. I'm like, that's definitely not right.
Just say it quick. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So that is very comic booky, but then they have all of these video game things that are overlaid too, where
Like
he's
versus
up against
symbols.
versus symbols,
sounds from classic
sounds.
games. Like I
Yes.
swear, there's like Sonic sounds. in
There's
this
so
game.
much Zelda in this.
There's
I
coins
heard.
dropping.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, for sure.
There's like ratings. Like I'm
Yep.
sorry, when it showed his roommate, I believe, and it says his rating is a 7.5. It's like he's a 7.5. He's fine. And then like his own rating earlier, Scott Pilgrim's rating earlier was like excellent or something like that.
Yeah. And there's
But
stuff
yeah.
like he goes to the bathroom and there's a pee bar that like lowers.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is very like, oh, this is Death Stranding. Like,
This is also me because I always have to pee.
yeah.
So beyond the visual and audio elements, I find that the pacing is unlike so many other movies because it never stops.
Yeah.
For the almost
relentless.
2 hours, it's even moving from scene to scene, it will jump cut, and like there's a lot of care given to make sure that like if they're gonna swing the camera to the right,
Yep.
the next shot is gonna swing to the right in the same way and transition you to the next scene.
Yeah, and they're continuing the same conversation and like walking in the same direction. So it's not like they're smashing to a whole other scene. They're continuing the scene
In a
seamlessly.
completely different location.
Yes, to a different
and
place.
time and setting and everything.
You lived in Toronto, Travis.
A little bit.
I lived in Toronto.
Yep.
Were there any locations that you recognized?
Yes and no. Like I wasn't in Toronto long enough, but I definitely recognize most of the settings. Like
Yeah.
you could tell that they obviously were like, I mean, there's even just stuff in this movie that's got so many like Canadian institutions like Second
pizza,
Cup.
Pizza, yes.
Second Cup is where Anna Kendrick's sister
I didn't
worked.
notice Second
Yeah,
Cup.
her name tag says Second Cup.
Oh, it did.
Yeah,
You're right.
I know. So I was like, oh, a Second Cup. And
Yeah.
then Pizza, and I was like, oh.
And Honest Ed's, which is a very
Yes,
famous retailer
yeah.
in Toronto, and then Casa Loma.
Casa
which,
Loma.
like, if you are a Canadian, if you're from Toronto, it was filmed in Toronto, based in Toronto, and you are gonna like be really attracted to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's clearly in Toronto. It's
Yeah.
not like they're in Toronto trying to be
It's not-
like New York or
Literally,
trying
yeah.
to be another city. It's clearly
Toronto.
supposed to be in Toronto, and they mention that they're in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like they
Yep.
state that they're in Toronto.
Yeah.
Because Ramona Flowers was originally from New York,
Yeah.
and she's like, I just needed to get away from the big city, so she moved to another big city
Yeah,
in
pretty
Canada.
much.
Yeah, that was one thing. Shout out to my husband. He's like, I take issue with the fact that she is talking about Toronto as if it is so different, that it's another planet, because she talks about how it's still snowing.
Yeah.
And he's like, it is barely different. He's like, it is the same weather. I'm like, well, it's a little bit colder. He's like, no, it's not that different.
Yeah.
She's talking about it like it's totally different.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, she didn't make the biggest it's not like she moved to Montana. Like
No.
it's not that different.
Yeah. Climate, size of city.
Yeah.
Anyway. The whole conceit of this movie is that Ramona Flowers and Scott Pilgrim meet at a party. Scott's a dork, right?
Scott's a dork, but also kind of an ass. Like,
Yeah.
so this was, I think, my biggest takeaway from watching it now.
As like a fully
As
grown
a fully
adult.
grown, mature adult.
Yes. Who is like now has had relationships
Literally.
and knows how to
Speak to people,
Yes.
even. Like, I was watching this and I was like, wow, Scott's an ass.
He's a toxic boyfriend.
Yeah, he makes some really bad decisions and says some really dumb things. And I'm just like, wow, I don't think I realized how much of a jerk he is, especially in how he deals with knives.
So yes. So Knives is basically starts off with he has this new girlfriend who is a high school
17.
girlfriend.
17-year-old and he's 22, which also creepy.
Hey,
but
they've barely held hands.
Barely.
And he states that.
Yeah, it's just-
everything's on the level.
Is that illegal here? I'm not sure.
It's not. But, well, holding hands is legal. That's fine. They can do everything
No,
that they
fair.
did.
I looked it up afterwards. Age of consent is 16.
Okay, there
Yeah.
you go.
Really?
Yeah, I know, weird.
Oh, anyway.
Even so,
Moving on.
Yeah.
It's still a little weird. But basically he's dating this girl and it's clear that his value that he's taking from this relationship is how much she likes him.
Yeah.
And how
Power.
cool that she thinks that he is.
Yep.
And it lifts him up and it's not like a two-way
not
relationship at all.
At all. And I feel terrible for Knives most
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like poor Knives. Yeah, she gets a little obsessive later on, but early Knives scenes, I'm just like heartbroken watching her.
Yeah.
And like she's just so excited to see him, and she's just like she just wants to be in at his band practice and everything like that. And then like
She's the most supportive.
dog.
oh yeah, and yeah, like her, I'll be quieter. Like I cried.
Yeah. Give her a few years. She'll be badass.
Oh, she was badass
was
by the end of
badass.
this
Yeah,
that's
movie.
true.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But like she had to get through a crappy boyfriend
Yeah.
to get there. So
Yeah. Speaking of crappy boyfriends,
yeah.
God.
Oh wow.
great transition.
Yeah, it's very good.
Well,
And you know what's
Exes.
even better
Exes.
when you call it out. So Ramona Flowers finds Scott Pilgrim. They, I guess, fall in love and have this very PG love scene where you see her back and she's like, ooh. And then you realize that she has 7 evil exes from her past dating life
Yes.
who all want to kill Scott Pilgrim.
This is also very video gamey, where
Yes.
it's like, does that make sense? It doesn't. She's like, this is what it is. I have 7 evil exes.
Yep.
You have to defeat them if we're gonna date.
Yeah.
That's just
It's
that
very
is the
matter
plot.
of fact.
Yes,
Like,
this is how it is.
All the craziness
Sorry.
was very matter of fact. And I think that's really fun. It's funny because like I watched this with my wife last night, who hasn't seen it in a very, very long time, and she said, like, I just couldn't accept that they were okay with like this club being destroyed. And I'm like, you just gotta go, just roll with it. Like you just like things
a
are
video game.
happening. Yeah. She's like, why can he see her in her dreams? And I'm like, you just roll with it. You just accept the fact that this is happening, and that's all you got to do.
Later, he's going to pull a sword out of his heart
Yeah.
and you're going to have to be
It's
okay with
fine.
it.
Yeah,
At
you just-
least once.
You just have to accept it. So
Were there any evil exes that you specifically wanted to call out, talk about, shout out? Because I had one that I loved.
Go
and it
for
was
it.
Chris Evans.
Okay.
As Lucas Lee. So essentially, the scene's at Casa Loma, that big castle that I talked about earlier. And he's a movie star. They're filming a movie there. He's like the stereotypical action hero and like has a bunch of stunt doubles that fight Scott. And even he kicks Scott's butt, but he's like, man, Scott Pilgrim's like, man, you should go skateboard off this rail because I hear that you're a big skateboard guy. And he pulls down his chest and there's like a skateboarding brand tattoo on him. He's like, bro, I'm going to do this. And he like...
That's actually a really good impersonation. He goes full on, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
I'm Batman.
Ramona's my girl.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You'll have to go through me.
And so he grinds down this rail for a whole minute long and then just explodes and dies at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, he gets down to like 300. Did it put it
300
in kilometers?
Kilometers.
Yeah,
it was
it did.
kilometers.
kph. So
Yes.
yes, for anyone who's not in the United States of America, metric is a thing that you might want to learn about. Sorry, that was really...
no.
The Imperial system is stupid. Let's just leave it at that.
You're probably not wrong.
Do you know how much a mile is to convert into
I don't.
kilometers?
I
I have
don't.
a hard time knowing like how long a foot is, honestly.
How about what's a centimeter?
Yes.
Everything's tens.
Yeah.
There's
It
10
just makes
millimeters
sense.
in a centimeter. There's not like it's 1.6 to.
What
Anyway,
about a pint or a
no
quart?
clue? No clue. What is that?
Anyway, also just with Chris Evans, I mean, all of them in general. Chris Evans points out that basically each of the exes has kind of their own thing, and it's very same thing, video gaming.
Yes.
Where each boss has
It's a
like
boss
its own
battle.
mechanic.
Yep.
Where Chris Evans, he has his stunt doubles.
Yep.
He has like 9 stunt doubles. So then Michael Sarah?
Michael Cera.
For some reason, Michael didn't sound right.
Yeah.
And I said Michael Sarah, and I'm like, is that his name?
Yeah, that's his name.
Anyway, Michael Cera is fighting Chris Evans, and then he punches somebody. And then it's like, oh, that's not Chris Evans. That's some lookalike guy. And then he's like, I can do it without my stunt team. And there's 9 of them. And it was just it was a good way of twisting each one.
Yes.
That they each had their own thing.
They each had their own thing, and each one was different and interesting. It's like it's like a boss battle, like a boss rush game, where like you're literally just going through the bosses. Yeah, there's a little bit of story in between, but like every boss has a little bit of something different, little like different mechanics and everything like that. So
Did you play the Scott Pilgrim video game?
I did. It's like a side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I think it translates very well to both video game and comic book and movie. Like all 3 things are just very well done.
Yeah, if you like Castle Crashers or any kind Battletoads, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, Simpsons arcade, like you're gonna love that.
All
game.
that kind of stuff. Exactly.
So the one played by, Vegan Todd, I also liked him.
Yes.
He
Brandon
just cracked
Routh.
me up. Yes, they just they did that thing where it's a hipster movie, but they're kind of making fun of hipsters at
They're
the
making
exact
fun
same
of the
time.
vegan stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
even though it's a movie very marketed towards kind of our demographic and age group, where we all know hipsters or maybe are hipsters.
Are hipsters, yeah.
And it makes fun of them.
Yep.
While same thing, kind of marketing towards
I
that.
feel like they made this movie for 20-year-old Jacob and Travis.
Literally.
Basically, yeah.
Pretty much.
But the one played by Mae Whitman.
Yes. Oh, Roxie.
So I like her.
I love
She's
Mae
funny.
Whitman.
But the fact that she basically died
Yes.
by orgasming to death was an excellent way of a different death for a boss.
The weakness is the back of her knees. How do you know that? Well, when we were making out, I would just
Stop talking. Stop talking. And also another video gamey thing. That's the
You
weakness.
find the weakness, literally.
Why is it that spot?
Yeah.
It's just because that's what it is.
What it is.
But yes, that cracked me up quite a bit.
It's really, really good. So
Yeah, when Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who played Ramona Flowers, pulled out her hammer, all I could think of was
Yes.
Amy from the Sonic movies.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like, oh, they're gonna fight.
So
yeah,
I would
girl
say-
fight. Woo!
like Roxie.
It's such a bro thing.
no.
Girl fight.
No, okay.
Oh Lord.
I'm not saying it because it's a bro thing, but actually the Roxie fight's my favorite fight in this movie.
Well, yeah.
Also,
I'd
it's
expect that
actually
from you.
No, but it's very good.
It is good.
all the fight scenes are very
the
good.
choreography
Yes.
in all the fight scenes, terrific.
It
Like,
reminded me of like a kung fu movie.
yes.
Like it was very over the top.
Yeah, but it was good.
Yeah.
Like every hit had power behind it. Like every hit mattered. And it was like, and yeah, it's weird because like Michael Cera plays Scott, and Scott's such this like meek, like not meek, but just like weak looking.
You mean 70% of Michael Cera's characters?
Yeah, literally. But like he's just there's no.
I mean, he has range. I watched Molly's
for
game,
sure.
and he plays like a real jerk off in that movie, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic. But like 3/4 of his characters are that.
Yeah, and so like the thing is like Scott is
Casting.
very like there's no backbone to Scott, and you know
he's roundhouse kicking people.
yeah, so there's like it's funny because you watch him fighting, and then I'm like, oh, there's like some confidence in there, and he plays he does the fight scenes very well. Like I very much enjoyed the fight scenes because of that. No, I really like the Roxie fight scene. There's really good music in that scene where it's like there's a thumping bass, and it's just like done really really well.
And the club that they're in is gorgeous.
It's very, very good.
White everywhere,
Yep.
and there's lots of light, and it looks great.
It's very good. And then I really like the opening fight for Matthew Patel, the very first one.
Really?
Not okay.
I liked it too.
The first half of Matthew
Except
Patel.
kind of the racial stuff.
Yes, I didn't like that.
Yeah, hey, are we going to open this this bag of worms right
Let's say,
now?
I didn't need him to go full Bollywood. I didn't.
I didn't know how I felt. It made me a little
I felt uncomfortable watching it.
But then I'm like, I don't
It's
know.
a product of its
It's not
time.
like it's a white guy playing
No, for sure.
an Indian guy doing Bollywood. So, but I was like, it didn't feel like that the Bollywood was very well done.
No, I felt uncomfortable watching.
It was thrown in at the last second. You're like, hey, what is he? Is he Patel? Is he Bollywood?
Can do Bollywood.
Yeah.
Like it felt weird.
The fireballs and the demon chicks, that's right out of the comics. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like the Bollywoodness of it, I didn't need the first half.
See, even the character made me
No,
uncomfortable.
he's annoying. No, I think what I like the most about the Matthew Patel scene is literally he comes crashing in, and there's the what did I do? And there's a really good swell of the music, and it's really really like and it hits like a really good crescendo where he like punches them and he goes flying. Like it's just a really good moment, the beginning of that
So
scene.
you mean just like plot wise, the fact that it's the first one and he's figuring out what's even happening and he's confused.
The execution of that initial scene
I can get on board with
is
that.
very, very good. And like how Patel comes flying in, the hit, and then like just the initial conflict and trying to figure that out, I really, really liked.
Yes.
Then it took a weird turn where I felt uncomfortable. And then I was like, okay, this could be done. Like
as soon as he did some head bobbing thing, and then he does his first like Bollywood hand gesture, just like while he's like trash talking, and does a head bob, and besides the racial stuff, it just made me cringe.
Yeah.
It was just cringy.
Right, and I thought that was good acting, but I think the writing was bad.
Everyone's yes, I think so, because everyone's over the top.
Yeah.
And like it's all kind of cringy. But that one I didn't like.
The
other ones I could appreciate the cringe. Like it was fine. I was on board, but that one I was not.
See, and I think the thing is too, like watching this movie 10 years later, like being more mature, you can tell that this movie is a bit of a product of its time because like Kim, who I love, played by Alison Pill, I love her.
Yeah.
And she uses a few words that I'm like, oh, that's not a word, that's the R word. And I'm like
more than once, I think.
I didn't even notice.
I caught it a few times and I was like, oh nope, that doesn't fly. And but I think it was a product of its time.
There was
it'd be tricky. You might be able to. It depends how you have to strike the right tone.
It's not how Kim acts though. It's not like
no.
And see, there was a line for me that like they were talking about knives and they asked her about Chinese food. And
yes,
like,
that
was like
uncomfortable.
coming up on the line, and then they're like, "Can you date outside of your race?"
Yes.
See, but no, the reason why that's funny though is because the joke is not on her; it's on Scott.
Yes,
Scott is the one
yes.
being the idiot.
Yes,
and the joke is that he is doing stupid things and making it weird
because he's an ass.
He's like the audience surrogate, or he's the surrogate for that person that would be insensitive. The ass.
Like the joke isn't on her.
Yeah.
He's not making fun of her. The joke is just like Anchorman.
The
like
thing
whenever
is
he says when he says sexist things in Anchorman, the joke isn't on Christine Applegate.
Right.
The joke is on Will Ferrell.
Right, because we're watching it being self-aware.
He is showing what the character that he is, and he is the idiot.
But they nail it sometimes. Like when they do the I'm gonna break out the L word, and then he's like, lesbians? No, not that one. Or sorry, break out the L word, lesbian? Not that one. Lesbians?
Yeah.
Like that was very good.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Again, that's about Scott. Scott's the butt of that joke.
Yes. Yeah, because he's a moron.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's when those work. But yeah, there were certain ones like Kim just randomly.
I could see that because she's very serious.
Yes, and that's the thing. It wasn't really
it's not a
played
comment
that
on
way.
her.
And then I think also a bit what bothered me, Wallace is great, but honestly, one of his only characters is that he's gay, and that was brought up like every single scene. And I think
Didn't they call him Gay Wallace at one point?
probably. But the thing is, like, I think that like Scott introduces, but then again, I guess that would be played for Scott. Again, he introduces knives to Wallace, and this is Wallace. He's gay. Did I tell you he's gay? Like,
if they had made him further, like if they had developed Wallace further, then yeah, I can see both sides of that one.
Yes.
That one could go either way.
but that's the thing. There was a few moments in this movie that I was like, okay, just a product of
That you
the
can tell
time
it
that
was,
it
like,
was
10
made.
years
Yeah,
ago,
it was
yeah.
just the product of the time that it was made. It probably wouldn't fly nowadays.
I just want to know why Kieran Culkin didn't get work for a long time. Like he's
Right?
Oh,
so funny.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's
Have you watched
hilarious.
Succession?
I do not.
Okay,
It's
because I've
kinda-
heard he's great at that
Yeah.
too.
I've heard Succession is great. I just haven't watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much content on television.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
We talked about kind of the first four exes. We didn't talk about the Katayanagi twins. The Katayanagi twins.
You want to try that
Did I do
again?
that?
One more
Oh.
time?
Ha! We talked about the first four evil exes, but we didn't talk about the final three. The
You can do it.
first two were the Katayanagi twins.
Good job, man.
And Gideon, aka
Yes.
G-Man, that's been like teased throughout this entire movie.
Exactly.
Back to Todd. Him and Brie Larson.
Yes.
At the very beginning on the phone, I didn't know how I felt because she is super breathy.
Yes.
Like excessive, which all the characters are very
Over the top.
oh yeah, they're all over the top.
Yeah.
It's all like old comic booky
Yeah.
over the topness.
She
But-
kind of talks like this the whole time when she's on
like,
the phone.
so I hear you're dating someone new. So am I. That's great. It's like a lot. And I was like, ooh. And then once you're in person, I was like, oh, okay, this is fine.
Yeah.
But just on the phone, I was like, this is kind of making me uncomfortable. I don't know how I feel.
And see, I loved Brie Larson. in
She's
this.
so
Oh,
good.
she's so good.
She's
in this.
really, really,
She's
really
so
good.
in
There are.
this.
I don't think there's a single person in this whole cast, even like the bit players, that I was like, that's a bad. They're all great.
They're all good bits.
Even the vegan police in that
Yes.
scene. One of
Oh,
the
that's
guys
funny.
is from Westworld. Is
Oh.
like a main character in Westworld.
I did not
Yeah.
notice that.
And Thomas Jane's the other one who
Yes.
Thomas Jane was on The Expanse. I love The Expanse. Love Thomas Jane, but
Clifton Collins Jr. plays a really big role in Westworld.
yes, he does.
The vegan police were great.
Yeah, they were.
They're
They
fantastic.
high-fived as they go away.
And they're pointing out with their finger guns
Yep.
that
Oh my
shoot
God.
lasers.
Yep.
Or that just have like laser targeting sights
Yeah.
on them through their fingers. They don't have actual guns.
Yeah, it's so
I
good.
thought chicken
Fantastic.
parm was vegan.
Yeah. It's like, oh, maybe not.
The Katayanagi twins.
You did it again.
I did
Good
it again.
job.
I did it. The final scene is like in a big club.
Yeah, it's the final battle of the bands.
Yeah.
pretty much for the win of it, and it's like the twins versus the Sex Bombs, and they're doing like it's kind of like just like you're battling at the same time, but there's like what ends up happening in that fight is like big holographic a dragon for the twins and
A gorilla.
Like a Yeti
looking
gorilla.
thing for
Yeah. Like a snow
representing-
Yeti.
like a Donkey Kong almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's representing, the band, and those monsters pretty much fight. So it's like just like a giant, big, like monster fight, which was actually kind of cool. Like the music was great,
It was
like-
a good mixture instead
Yeah.
of like the actual like fist to fist.
fist to fist. It was like like just let's make this one just CGI.
Yeah.
yeah,
And then the final G-Man Gideon fight,
yeah,
which is in another like underground club.
yep.
Where the Sex Bombs get signed to a contract,
Yeah.
but without Scott because he has an ego and he doesn't want to sign away his life to Gideon,
Yeah.
who is the final evil ex from Ramona Flowers.
To be fair,
I get it.
he's super sketchy.
Oh, yeah.
It
Don't
looks
trust
like a
him.
bad idea.
Played by Jason Schwartzman.
Who does a great job
Uh-huh.
of being the skeeziest, hipsteriest, but corporate guy
Record label exec that
who's
you've
like,
ever...
I will own you.
Literally,
Yeah.
because that's literally what he does to Ramona. He's got like a
Yeah.
brain chip.
Yes. Which I'm glad they did, because at first you're like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And he kind of has her, he's like, she's mine now.
She just makes bad decisions.
and he's like petting her. Yeah, instead of it being like, because we've already gone down this comic book video game route.
Right.
And has her next, and he's like petting her head like a dog. And he's like, yeah,
on
she's
his
not-
large throne.
Yeah, and it's very
she's
it's
just
very like
sitting
Star
there.
Wars. It's
Yeah.
very like Return of the Jedi. Like
Right.
it was weird. And then
I was gonna say Egyptian, but
sure.
Star Wars, sure.
Yeah.
She's thinking Leia and like
Oh,
Yeah, and Jabba.
yeah.
Jabba has her anyway. We could go down that whole thing, but it's fine. Yeah, and then it turns out that he put like a chip in her brainstem, basically,
pretty much,
so that he controls her, which is weird, but that's fine.
Yeah, totally.
It kind of explains that whole thing.
Yeah, I will say that I mean, okay, having read the comics, blah blah blah, right? But like,
you're going to be that guy.
There's a lot more development to Ramona in the books,
would hope so.
Obviously. And I think that was also something I noticed this time around was Ramona's great. You're not really given a reason why she likes Scott in the first place.
No.
Other than the fact that he's like the nicest boyfriend she's ever had, even though he's kind of an ass.
Not saying much.
Yeah. And so...
Well, I mean, she does a little bit. Like she says
basically
all their other relationships have ended poorly and they're all terrible assholes.
The thing is, in the comics, there's a lot more to Ramona. Like, I think getting to the point of where she respects herself to not put herself in these relationships anymore because she keeps falling into these relationships with these guys that treat her like garbage, right? And you don't really get that out of her because Scott is our main hero and for the simplicity of the movie, right?
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. It kind of just pushes Scott forward, right? And where I think, at the end, maybe Ramona should have gained the power of like self-respect, right?
Yeah.
And Scott maybe the love part because he realizes he can like actually like someone after envy. And maybe Ramona should have gotten the power of self-respect because she respects herself to make a decision not to be with someone who's garbage. But she really ended up being the damsel at the very end, which kind of sucks because I would have liked to, like, don't get me wrong, Knives coming in and then fighting with Gideon and all that kind of stuff was great. And also Scott getting what was coming to him with having to confess to Knives and Ramona that he cheated on them because
I thought you were gonna say getting killed.
No,
he got what was coming to him.
Yeah, I meant like in terms of like, well, he did die right after he confessed it, but he needed to have some sort of like penance for what he did, right? And realizing that what he did was wrong because if Scott didn't have any kind of issue, like if he didn't have to confront Knives with what he did, I would be like, Scott didn't learn anything in this movie, right? Yeah. So it became Scott's journey, but also there's unresolved Ramona stuff there that I would have liked to have seen.
Right. Her like learning and growing and some self-reflection.
And that's the thing, she was great this entire movie and then she just devolved into a damsel at the very end.
Wouldn't it have been great if she defeated Scott at the end and he was like the 8th evil ass? Did I just make this movie better?
That's interesting.
I just made this movie better.
I don't know if it's better, but it's a different, interesting way to go.
You would have needed to completely rewrite this thing though to make Ramona the centerpiece, or
even just more developed so that it could switch protagonists.
Exactly,
or that he like became possessive of her at the end, and then she was like, "Oh, maybe I can't do this again." And
I'm glad that he
Knives
like
showing
grew.
her kill him.
Oh my god, here we go, fanfic.
This is my fanfiction. Welcome.
But yeah, like I like the fact that Scott kind of, grew as a person. I just kind of wish there was some of that with Ramona too. Mm-hmm. So
even throughout the movie, it's not, she's very vague.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've made bad decisions.
I
want to stop doing this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about my past. My past keeps catching up with me. Yeah. And I can't keep running and like just very vague things. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of the character. Like, I kind of get it, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have a little bit more.
I think. Because, I think everyone in this movie is pretty one note, except for Scott. Like, I don't think there's anyone, as much as everyone is great in this movie, every character is pretty one note. Kim is always angry.
Kind of caricature.
Yeah,
characters.
You know what I mean? Like, Envy
Wallace is gay.
Yeah, like, they're all exactly, like, Knives is young. Like, they're all very one note. Yeah. Knives probably got the most amount of growth maybe out of this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, she dyed her hair, and then her hair color got punched out of her head.
He punched out her highlights. I think that may have been one of my favorite lines because he says it
with such.
Oh my god! Because the one character is
young
Todd.
Neil. Oh, Todd punches. Yeah,
he's like, I'm not above hitting a girl, and he punches her.
Yeah,
and then it's a young Neil.
Neil.
He's like cradling her. Yeah. He punched out her highlights. He punched out her highlights, and it's very
so
like
dramatic.
war movie holding your fallen comrade.
Yeah,
it cracked me up.
Really good.
Yeah. You touched on something that I don't think we've explicitly said. There's a lot of dialogue in this movie. Like it's very dense, and there are a lot of jokes that if you aren't listening, you'll miss them.
Yes.
It's very Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just flying. They're just going a mile a minute.
At one point he asks, he's on a computer, it's 2010, and he goes, Amazon.ca, what's a website for that?
Yeah.
And like, again, there's so many jokes in there.
You wouldn't catch it if you're not really paying attention.
There are films made in Toronto.
Yeah.
Which like, again, there's a lot of dialogue in there that you just miss. This
Yeah.
movie has so much to it that I think even on a second rewatch, you might not catch everything.
Oh yeah, there's so many little Easter eggs and tidbits and everything scattered throughout that like you have to rewatch it to be able to catch all of it if you really wanted to see it all.
And great costumes. I mean, how many t-shirts did you recognize of Scott Pilgrim's?
I loved his CBC one that he had on that date with Ramona.
I did a double take. I was like, was that a CBC?
Yeah.
Which is the Canadian Broadcasting Company.
Also, he totally had an X-Men patch that he ripped off and threw on the ground.
I thought of you.
Yep,
I
love
thought of
that.
Travis. I was like, Travis would never rip off his
Brian
X-Men
Lee
patch.
O'Malley, the guy who made Scott Pilgrim, like the comic, he's a big X-Men fan. And so I think he drew that in there, like on Scott in his outfit in the comics. Like they made that outfit very similar to what he wears.
He wore like an Astro Boy shirt at one point too.
Yeah.
Astro
It's really
Boy?
funny. Yeah, I know
very
Astro
good.
Boy.
All through the movie, there's been a lot of explicitly video game elements to it. And then Gideon just kind of like it bumps it up when he's fighting him because he levels up and he pulls the sword out and now he has this new fancy weapon that he's fighting with. And now it's like he's it's like when you're in a game and you've leveled up a bunch and then you go back to like an old level and now you're just ripping through all the people that used to fight. That
he
used
got
to
a one up, right?
you.
Which is like pure video game.
Oh no!
You got
even,
an extra life.
Even just like the power, because now all these like henchmen, he's just like slaughtering all these henchmen.
Oh yeah,
and they're all just nothing now.
Yep.
And I was like, oh yeah, it feels appropriate. It's like any game when you go back and now you're like, haha. Fight me now. You used to kick my ass.
Not anymore.
What now? Yeah.
I really like that it also introduced like 2-player mode when Knives came in. Like it was like 2-player mode.
Yeah.
And then they like pretty much were doing the dance thing that they were doing.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that was really good.
Oh, they were doing the dance
More
thing.
or less, yeah. It was,
I didn't pick up
they
on
were like
that.
fighting at the same time, but it was pretty much the dance stuff that they were doing.
That they
at
were
the
doing
beginning.
earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, it was really good.
See? Jokes that you miss.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a lot about the movie. Why don't we conclude our thoughts about it with a little segment we call MinMax? It's the segment where we take points that we haven't talked about and talk about the good, max, and talk about the not so good, min, that we haven't covered yet. Why don't I go first? One point we haven't talked about is there's this little scene at the end with Nega Scott where there's like a negative, there's like a dark world version of Scott, and they end up just hanging out. And I was like, hey, that was really fun.
Yeah, when he's like, I've got to fight this last boss, and it's himself.
Yeah.
And then they just bond.
Yeah, they're just like, nah.
Yeah. Min, we talked about a little bit of the problematic dialogue. I won't go there. We already talked it through.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any mins or maxes that we haven't covered yet?
You know what, Travis, you go first.
Okay. Well, I do have a max that we haven't really mentioned. Is just the music is great, but the sound work in this movie is also really good. There's a ton of little tidbits of like noise that complement the dialogue. So like the scene I can think of is they're all it's right after band practice or something like that, and they're all chatting, and someone asked a question, and the Windows like dunna, like box noise popped up because young Neil happened to be on the computer at the same time.
Oh yes.
So like, but like that's not the only time that happens. Every single time there's like sometimes a question or an exclamation. There's usually a little chime or noise depending on the scene that happens at the exact same time. It's like really nice little touches. There's like, maybe it'll be like a Zelda tune, or it'll be like this or that, or like a bus noise, like they're mixed in throughout. And I very much appreciated like listening to once I noticed that they were there, I was like, I'm going to keep listening the entire time I listen to this movie and see what they're there. So
any mins?
We kind of did talk about how it's a little outdated, and I guess on top of that, Scott was kind of stalkerish when it came to Ramona. That bothered me.
I mean, it does explicitly say then he stalked her.
Yes, yeah.
And you know what? It was just at a party. It's not like he was like creeping outside her house.
He ordered an Amazon package to get her to show up at his house.
And it's like, I'm not signing for this until you
go on a date with me. Yeah, creepy. Huh. So there's just a lot of questionable things that Scott does that wouldn't be okay today, which, I mean, it's a good thing it's not okay today, but watching this movie, I was like, oh stop it. Like,
he coerces her into dating
him. And she's like, will you sign for this package if I say yes? Like, literally, she says that line of dialogue.
And I just want this guy to go away.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So there's some moments where I'm just like, Oh, one small max, Ramona saying all those T's. Where she's like, she literally rambles off all of the T's in her cupboard.
Oh.
Love that.
I didn't
Earl
know
Grey,
what you're
honey.
talking about.
Orange Pico.
Liver disaster. That's all.
That slipped into the middle. That was
it
really
was
funny.
very good. I love that part.
When you talk about the sound and the music, there's certain music choices that are really, really good.
Yes.
There's the one thing when she goes back to Gideon, when she tells him like, "Oh, I'm going back to Gideon," and it's just like on the street, like it's not in the club, and then "Under My Thumb" by the Stones starts playing, which is just thematically like exactly what's happening, like she's under his thumb. So there's certain things like that, and then the song that Brie Larson sings,
it's a metric song.
Yes,
it's
a metric song, and it's very the right level of it's good. It's a little indie, but they're like major label now,
right?
And it's actually a good song.
Yeah,
like I was like, oh, I love this song.
I've heard this. I've listened to the whole song. I like that version with Brie Larson singing it. Probably like I've heard a version of Metric singing it, but I like the version with Brie. There's a full Brie Larson,
Metric, but yes.
Oh, I love Metric too. Don't get me wrong.
The
but
soundtrack is wild.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like it. Halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, I gotta listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's Beck.
And there's some songs that are missing, like that. Oh no, never mind. That Metric song is in there. It's in that.
Yeah, Broken Social Scene, Black Lips, Beck, and then
I even liked a
Metric
lot
is
of
on there
the-
too, I
Black
think.
Lips.
I even liked some of the stuff that like the band was playing. Like
Yeah, like they're bad. They're purposefully bad,
but it's good.
Yes, like they're done. They're like, I'm
Crashing the
gonna
boys.
take you to your junk to the
Garbage
dump
man,
with my garbage truck.
Oh God.
We Hate
So-
You, Please Die.
Yeah.
Like that very short
that
song.
other band, so funny.
No,
the
the-
super emo angry band.
The battle against the twins. That song is like for the movie. It's called Threshold. And
Yeah, that one's
I
bad.
like that
Yeah.
one. That dun 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 dun.
They
It's
all
really
have like a good beat and bass line to
Yeah.
it. It's like the lyrics they made purposefully not very developed.
Right.
But yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, they are.
Anyway, what is it? My min first?
Yeah,
You know what? I think they could have shaved like 10 minutes off.
fair.
I think it's a little, just a smidge too quippy
Right.
and a smidge too long. And they could have edited down a little bit of the quips and like those extended jokes. Some of them could have done with just a touch of editing, but this is nitpicking. I mean,
Right.
it's a really good
It's a
movie.
really good movie. Yeah.
My
And I
thought was,
laughed
like,
the entire time.
I could take like 8 or 10 minutes off the front of this and still be fine. Because it almost takes 40 or
Yeah.
50 minutes to kind of get to the
even
exes.
just throughout, just like somewhere along the way,
Yeah.
there's some things that you could just edit down just a bit. But it's, like I said, it's nitpicking. And then Max, for me, the way that they put together the CGI effects with practical effects,
Yeah.
to me was really, really, really well done. Because that way the CGI is not reliant completely on the CGI. There is all these practical effects when the band is playing even, and like the wind is blowing at them when the monsters are when their
Right.
CGI monsters
Yeah.
are fighting. Like it's all put together very well. And the practical effects are just always better.
Yeah.
It's just always makes the movie better.
Yeah.
I made a specific note about the wire work because there were one
Yes.
or two times where even when the like that big club scene was happening
Yeah.
and they exploded from sound, like the characters were flipping, and I'm like, that's good wire
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Even the wire work in this movie's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Practical effects always make the movie just seem more real.
It's always better.
It's just always
like
better.
you go back to Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Jurassic Park still looks good
Yeah.
because it's all practical.
You want to touch it up with some CGI?
Yeah.
Good. Like clean, make it seamless. You
I'm
know
not
what I mean?
knocking like they
Oh,
had
yeah.
CGI monsters fighting each
Oh,
other,
for
and
sure.
I loved it.
Yeah. But you better
Yes.
have practical stuff in there. I can't take when it's you're pretty much just in front of an
'Cause
entire
it
green
dates
screen.
it
Yes,
so quickly.
It does. Yeah.
But this
Especially-
movie did not feel dated.
No, not at
for
all.
Me, for
Yeah.
the CGI at all.
Totally.
Guys, it sounds like we loved this movie.
Yes.
But I almost wonder if other people loved it too, and that's why we're going to now go to Critical Hits,
boy.
where we read choice user reviews from Metacritic.com. I'm going to start by reading off the first one, and this is from user Raphael. He gives it a 10, and he says, "Fantastic fun. So long as you like to have a good time, you should. Bring some friends, grab some ices, and enjoy the show. Seriously,
Ices.
this is a silly movie. Don't have your head in your ass. Just go for a good time and watch Scott kick some evil ex-boyfriend, girlfriend ass."
That's really good.
10 out of 10.
I think that sums things up very well.
Katie, do you want to do the second one from Dornbecker?
Sure.
From Dorbecker.
Dorbecker. So he, opposite take, he gave it a 1. He said, "Terrible, unfunny movie for hipsters and closet nerds." That might be true. It might be a small little like demographic.
Yeah.
It might be people our age. I don't know who like this movie. But anyway, for hipsters and closet nerds. And not just closet nerds, like known nerds.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I'm getting off track.
Yeah, geez.
I'm taking issue with this. I'm analyzing this comment. Can't believe this hype on this trash. The only people who would think this movie is funny are 5-year-olds.
Oy.
5-year-olds wouldn't think it was funny.
They wouldn't know what's going
They
on.
wouldn't know what was happening. But anyway, sorry. As you were.
He crushed the cup with the Coke in it. Ha ha ha. That's funny. Travis, you want to give us our third one?
All right, so this person, Calisanti11, basically Twilight for boys. Completely average and ugly teenager being loved by 2 awesome girls and having fantastic adventures with a lot of action. Well, at least it has some kind of humor going for it. That's something, I guess. They gave it a 3.
Also a 3 came from Iqbal. If you check my account, you will see that I'm a bit of a gamer. That being said, this movie is a stinker. The whole video game sketch as special effects just looks lame. If you dislike cheesiness like in the Twilight
What
series,
is with Twilight?
you sure will as hell dislike this. This one is a stinker, folks. As I said, 3 out of 10. But, you know, some of these reviews are positive. Katie?
Yep. Movie Addict gave it a 10. You can't put a genre on this movie. Music? Superb. Visuals? Fantastic. The dream movie for anyone who loves comic books. Can't talk to that one girl or wants to fight for their relationship. The cast is solid, as are the boss battles, which flow smoothly. Sarah and Culkin carry this, which... Culkin carries this?
Nah.
What?
He has one character note.
What?
But anyway.
Anyway, Sarah and Culkin carry this tale to the end with their own character quirks and problems. A male version of Twilight. What on earth?
All these reviews came from different time periods too.
A male version of Twilight, hyped up on buzz and action, and certainly a favorite of my movie catalog.
Why Twilight?
I don't know.
I don't get the comparison.
Did that many people watch? I don't know.
Why?
Did Twilight come out at the same time as this movie?
Why can't Twilight be
it
for boys and
probably
this movie be for girls? But whatevs.
Boys like video games, girls like vampires.
I'm just surprised all these guys are even talking about Twilight.
Yeah, jeez.
I mean, they could be
I
girls
assume they're
too.
guys. I don't know. Who knows?
Travis, you want to give us our last one?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
man.
Do You Voodoo? I gave it a 0. This is pure unadulterated cringe fest from start to finish. It's pretentious, artsy, farty, emo, annoying musical pile of poop. My toes curled throughout, and we had to admit defeat and switch it off halfway through.
No.
Do not watch. This is my #1 most hated film, with Love Actually a close second.
Those are the 2 strangest movies.
Love Actually.
What movies do you hate?
Oh my
Love
God.
Actually and Scott Pilgrim.
Oh my God, I can't even.
Those are my 2.
I can't. That's terrible.
Well, let's palate cleanse that last review away with a fun game that I came up for the 2 of you. And we're going to call this one Toronto or Nah. And I have a small sound effect here. I hope it works.
Toronto!
That
my
made me
God.
really happy. Who was that?
That, my friend... Oh, that, my friend, was Paul Stanley.
Oh, that's not who I was going to guess.
Who are you going to guess?
I don't know. Nugent, for some reason, came to mind, even though that's not his voice. But
So in Toronto or Nah, I'm going to give you 5 movies, and you're going to tell me, are they based in Toronto or Nah?
Based in or filmed? Oh, based in.
Based in Toronto.
Okay.
And there's no, like, I'm not about, like, tricking you guys, so, like...
It's Mississauga.
like the storyline is in Toronto.
Yes, and I believe in the case of a, like, checkmark movie, it was also filmed in Toronto.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's no tricks here. Okay, ready?
No trick.
Okay.
First film, Canadian Bacon, with John Candy. Toronto or Nah?
I'm going to say nah, just
Nah.
because it says Canadian in it. There's no
Yeah.
way they actually filmed
Nah.
it in Toronto.
That movie is based in Toronto.
Damn it.
The next one I have for you is Obsessed, the movie with Beyonce, Ali Larter, and Idris Elba.
No. Nah.
Are you
Nah.
sure? Are you sure?
I don't. No, I'm not. I'm not sure at all.
I'm going to say yes.
That movie is not based in Toronto.
Ah.
The F Word, or What If? It's the Daniel Radcliffe, Zoe Kazan movie from quite a few years ago, from maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
This is a complete guess. I'm
Nah.
going to say no.
It's known as the F Word in some territories and What If in other
Gotcha.
territories.
Nah.
Nah?
Nah.
What is that? Was that yeah or no?
That's a nah. Nah.
It was filmed and based in Toronto.
Oh,
Damn it.
boy.
For the most part. There were some scenes elsewhere, but mostly based in Toronto.
Ugh, half
The
a point.
Love Guru with Mike Myers. Remember that stinker?
Oh,
Yeah.
he loves to wear his Leafs jerseys.
He does.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say it's
No,
not
nah,
based in
nah.
it. No, nah.
Guys, did you see that movie?
No, God,
maybe
who
years
did?
ago. Years ago,
He was wearing a Toronto. It's based around the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, he wore a Leafs jersey in a lot of things. There's a Leafs win the cup scroller. Jesus, what is the word I'm looking for? The scrolls at the bottom.
Like ticker tape
The
almost?
ticker. There is a Leafs win the cup ticker at the bottom of a, I believe, an Austin Powers movie.
Okay.
I'm just saying, he'll wear anything and anything. He
Are you
doesn't
only
care.
allowed to
He'll-
wear Maple Leaf outfits in Toronto?
No, he
and
wears them
nowhere
everywhere.
else?
Yes, that is the rule.
But
Okay.
apparently we're wrong, is what he's
Apparently,
getting
yeah,
at.
that's
Last one, Gran Torino with Clint Eastwood.
That's not.
Where's it based?
Italy?
Somewhere in
wait.
California, I think.
No, that I was thinking. What am I thinking of?
Gran Torino, that movie that's based in Detroit, Michigan?
It's in Detroit?
Detroit, Michigan, which is
I
4
really
hours away
thought
from
it was-
Toronto, but not in Toronto. And that, my friends, was Toronto or not.
Oh
That
god.
doesn't
Well
look
done.
like Toronto, but
Well
that's
done.
okay. Another thing, they shout out Brampton,
Yeah, they
which
did.
I believe Michael Cera is from
Is he?
Brampton, or someone in the cast is from Brampton.
I'm sure.
But yeah, so one of the bands, they say, "Oh, such and such
Yeah,
from Brampton,
Brampton.
which is nearby
Yeah.
Toronto."
So people from the GTA, the greater Toronto area, will be happy. And you're right, he is from Brampton.
Boom,
Nice.
Lots of Canadians. You got Brie Larson, Michael Cera, Alison Pill.
Yep.
They're all Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple more,
I'm sure they're.
but I don't recall who.
I'm sure.
But yeah,
Just don't know who.
Stop. Michael Cera had a musical album?
what
I'm sorry? What?
is?
It's a lo-fi album?
And it's not Sex Bombs.
No, it's not. We
It's a
need to
great
listen
band
to
name,
this
by the way.
later.
We do.
The final thing I want to ask you guys is, should this movie be cut or seen? I'll just start and say it's fantastic. It holds up really well. It holds up mostly well in 2020. It should be seen. Don't skip this one. If you're a fan of games, of film, Edgar Wright crushes this, and so does all the cast.
Honestly, it's just entertaining. If you just want to, it's like a popcorn, like a very good popcorn movie.
Yep.
Like it's a well executed, smart popcorn movie. So if you want to have a good time, yeah, I would absolutely recommend to see it.
Totally. I mean, this has been, like I said, one of my favorite movies for a very long time, and it still is. It still holds up. It's really, really good. Definitely see it.
So 3 scenes from us. And that's it for this episode. You can find all things cutscenes at cutscenes.ca and cutscened_pod on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find me on the internet at Jacob McCourt. Katie, where can the folks find you?
I am on Twitter. I am at Lesperak. It's LESPPERAK on Twitter.
And Travis?
I'm on Twitter too, at Travis Colnut.
And that is the end of another episode of Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. Travis will leave you with the eternal words of Mr. Scott Pilgrim himself. Travis, take it away.
Bread makes you fat?
Thanks for listening.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.